actually met Sergeant Major Devaney was back in December 2009. I had just checked into my squadron VMAQ4, and as a young private first class, I was trying to stay out of trouble. Well, as luck would have it, staying out of trouble didn't work out so well. Within just about a month at my new unit, I managed to get pulled over for speeding on base. But in my defense, that road should have never been 20 miles an hour. Well, I digress. Anyhow, excuses aside, I notified my chain of command. I was in an uncertain predicament. With being such a junior Marine, it was indeed a scary thing. I notified my mentor, who notified my staff NCO, who notified my division chief, who then notified Sergeant Major Devaney. But that wasn't the end. Sergeant Major Devaney notified my division chief, who notified my staff NCO, who notified my mentor, who notified me that I'd have to give a presentation on speeding to a bunch of other criminals like myself. Anyways, I thought, crap, I've been here less than a month, and now I've got to explain what I did, why I did it, and why it was done. Well, I thought to myself, screw it. If I'm going to give a presentation, it's going to be the best presentation that they've ever seen. And that's what I did. I researched the laws on base, I found the speed limits, I even knew the speed limit on the respective parking lots. I spent the better half of that evening whipping up a slideshow presentation full of laws, pictures, it might have even had a short video in it. Nonetheless, I was ready to go. I got to the ready room, the place where we were presenting, sat down, listened to the Marines before me explain what they did and why they did it and why it was done. I thought to myself, man, everyone here is just kind of winging it. I hope I didn't overdo it. Anyhow, my turn came up. I stood up, plugged in my computer, pulled out my slideshow, gave my 5 to 10 minute presentation, sat back down, which all leads me to where I met Sergeant Major Devaney. Sergeant Major Devaney stood up, pulled out his incredibly sharp, incredibly deadly knife hand, and proceeded to yell at the 10 to 15 of us in the room. I swear to you, by some sort of voodoo magic, he grew 2 feet taller and was about 20 decibels louder than a NASCAR race. Now, I'm going to kind of have to paraphrase a bit because I can't 100% remember all the words, nor would it be appropriate. But it went something like this. Why is a bleeping PFC giving a better presentation than all my corporals and sergeants? So, again, I found myself in an uncertain predicament. I sat down, everyone looked at me, the person who had shown them up, and they were agitated. On one hand, I had given a good presentation, and maybe earned a little respect with our Sergeant Major. On the other hand, everyone hated me most likely, so that was awkward. Anyway, Sergeant Major Devaney proceeded to say, good job, we were all dismissed. Now, even though I only served with him for a short period of time, I can honestly say that he's one of the better leaders that I've encountered in my Marine Corps career. And it's an honor, and I'm humbled to have him here to speak with us today. But before I do that, I'd like to go over some of information about him, where he's been, and why he's going to be speaking with us today. Davey joined the Marine Corps on an infantry contract back in '83. His first duty station was Hawaii, 3rd Battalion, 3rd Marines, where he held the billets as a rifleman, fire team leader, and squad leader. In '86, Corporal Devaney was selected as a member of Surveillance Target Acquisition Platoon, 3rd Battalion, 3rd Marines. After completing Scout Sniper School, he was assigned to Scout Sniper 3-3. He did a tour as a DI from '89 to '91 and returned to 3-3 where he deployed 2 more times. In '94, he pinned on Staff Sergeant and was ordered to 3rd Marine Expeditionary Forces Special Operations Training Group, where he became an urban sniper instructor and chief instructor. In '98, he deployed to Operation Desert Fox with Battalion Landing Team 2-4, which was attached to Operation Detachment Alpha. In 2000, he deployed again with ODA 135, 136, 132 to Malaysia as a member of the Joint Task Force 510 with Malaysian National Police. After leaving the Special Operations Training Group, Gunnery Sergeant Devaney was assigned to Alpha Company, 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, where he trained as a 1-7 Scout Sniper. He was elected to 1st Sergeant in '03, just before the invasion of Iraq, and led 270 Marine sailors soldiers during the combat, and received a Bronze Star for destroying the enemy in their will to fight. In 2004, 1st Sergeant Devaney was ordered to duty at the Instructor Staff 1st Sergeant for 2nd Beach and Terminal Operations Company, Savannah, Georgia. In 2007, he was selected as the rank of Sergeant Major and received orders to be a VMAQ4 Cherry Point, which is where I met him. After 2 more deployments to Iraq, Sergeant Major Devaney received orders to Weapons Training Battalion, Quantico, Virginia. He retired 31 December 2013. His military awards include the Legion of Merit, Bronze Star, Meritorious Service Medal, the Navy Marine Corps Achievement Medal with 3 gold stars, the Navy Marine Corps Commendation Medal with a gold star, the Army Commendation Medal, and the Combat Action Ribbon. Sergeant Major Devaney has given speeches around the world to include Canada, Malaysia, Thailand, Kuwait, Iraq, and others, ranging from speaking to various military organizations. He's written 2 books, Surviving Combat, Mentally and Physically, and They Were Heroes, a Sergeant Major's Tribute, which he'll be speaking about a little bit today. He's published many articles. And in closing, I'd like to say we're humbled to have you here today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Bob.
Godspeed.
Thank you. Can anyone not hear me? People always ask the question, can you hear me? Which is a stupid question, because if you couldn't hear me, you couldn't answer me. Anyway, thank you for the intro, Tommy. I'm here to speak about my book and a couple of other things, and what I think is actually more important is post-traumatic stress, but more importantly, post-traumatic growth. I don't have a clicker, so bear with me. Okay, so I'm the clown, if you didn't get it. I'm a sarcastic person, so try to keep up with me. All right, so why? I have an advantage over everyone in here because I'm probably the dumbest person in this room. So I can't get any worse. Okay? I've been bombed, rocketed, shot at, IED, you name it. Okay? So I have some experience with many of these stressors that you can have in combat, etc. Okay? I've seen a Marine blown into a skeleton. I've seen a Marine with a bullet hole right through his temple, and I've watched one of my sergeants take his very last breath. I've also given multiple notifications to mothers, wives of their loved ones that were killed in combat, which was actually the hardest duty I've ever done, by far. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. I've been studying combat psychology for over 30 years, long before I ever went to college. I have a BS degree in social psychology, 30 years of leading warriors, multiple deployments, and the VA has diagnosed me with PTSD/TBI. And I'll get more into that later. I'm not a psychopath like some people would think if you've got PTSD you are. We'll get into that more later. Okay, so the intro is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about my book a little bit, and then we're going to talk about combat psychology, a little bit of post-traumatic growth. So in 2005, I was at a seminar in Quantico, Virginia, and my friend said to me, Carl Gant, I went to boot camp with him. He was a reconnaissance Marine. He says, hey dude, let's go up to Quantico, or let's go to Bethesda and see the combat wounded. I'd never done that before. I thought it was a good idea. And if anyone knows anything about DC traffic, it took us 3 days to get there because we kept getting caught in traffic. Finally, we got up there, and we went through all those rooms. It was absolutely an amazing experience to talk to these Marines and Corpsmen. At the time, the soldiers were going to Walter Reed. But their attitude was absolutely incredible. Every one of them, even missing legs and arms, was saying, put me back into combat. Every one of them. Their families, their attitudes were incredible. But probably the most important thing there was 22 reserve Marines in there. And their job, what they were told is, your job is to take care of these Marines and their families. Or as well, take care of their families. So even when they were off, they'd get in a van and take them out, get them dinner and do whatever. I mean, they were totally dedicated to take care of those families. So it was an incredible experience. And I went back to my command, and I hadn't gone to college or anything at the time, but I liked writing, I liked telling the story. So I wrote the story from one of my first college classes, and I got an A, and I was like, holy crap, I never got an A other than physical education in high school. How did this happen? It must be an anomaly. And then I got other A's, and so either the teachers were bad or maybe I started getting better. Anyway, so I wrote this story, and then people started liking hearing the stories, so I kept telling more stories and more stories. And that's what led on to me writing other things. In 2010, I was stationed in Quantico, Virginia, and a fellow sergeant major sent out an email asking some opinions. And a fellow sergeant major said, responded right away with some garbage, I thought. So it really bothered me, and I couldn't sleep that night. So I went in at like 2 o'clock in the morning, I went into work, and I wrote a scientific paper destroying them with empirical data, showing them that they were wrong. Well, that was a mistake in a way, because that sergeant major that was my boss was, dude, you can write. I got a job for you. So he gave me another job, and that was to work at the United States Naval Institute out of Annapolis. They got a magazine there called CD Magazine. So I was an editor for them, and it's not what you think of an editor. All I did for editing is I would read the story and give my opinion. 99% of them I said it was boring and put me to sleep. 1% were about Marines, and I thought they were good. So I was honest, in other words. But anyway, on the breaks I would tell these stories, and all the people in there are all senior to me. They're Coast Guard and Navy and Air Force and Army, every service, they're all colonels and above. There's only a couple listed in there. But I would tell them these stories about these heroes, which led to this book. And they were amazed by these stories. And one day they said, hey, you know what? Right there's the editor of the boss of the Naval Institute Press. Put it into a book and he'll publish it for you. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. So I was like, yeah, whatever. So about 3-4 months into it, with them keep telling me that, I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll give this a try. So I spent 6 months doing research, 6 months writing, basically a whole football season writing. And it got published. And it's 52 stories about 50 individuals. There's soldiers, sailors, and Marines in the book. But anyway, I asked them to, and they allowed me to dedicate the book to my dad. My dad was in the 36th Infantry in World War II, and he was obviously he's my dad, so you know a little biased there, but he was a hero to me, and I'll tell you a couple reasons why. First of all, that is actually my dad, the little guy right there on the left, and that's a Nazi sympathizer right there. And although he was a Nazi sympathizer, my dad was not going to allow. He was being beaten to death. You can probably see the blood in his face. He was being beaten to death by clubs. And when my dad went in there, he was almost clubbed to death himself. But he was not going to allow another human being to be beaten under those circumstances. So he went in and saved his life. But that's how he lived his life. Even when he worked in a theater, he'd jump in the middle of fights and all that stuff. He was always the peacemaker. And just an incredible dude. He's not alive anymore, but I was able to dedicate the book to him, and I was very happy about that. So after that, after the beginning of the book goes into Iraq, then it goes into the Caicos, taking care of the families, and then it goes into Afghanistan. Now I will tell you, every story in the book is not, you hear a book about heroes in combat, you probably think it's a bunch of guys running around killing bad guys. No, actually it wasn't intentional, but it happened this way. All the guys that made it in my book, that I put in my book, every one of them is in the book because they saved other people's lives, not because of the lives they were taking. So they risked their lives to save their fellow Marines, soldiers, sailors, etc. So I like to tell this story here. The Secretary of Homeland Security right now is General Kelly. Well, General Kelly's a former Marine general, and when he was the commanding officer, there was an incident that happened with these two kids here. He calls it the story of 6 seconds. So the Marine Corps got 240 years of history. Lots of really good history. But I only want to tell you about 6 seconds of that history. These are two individuals. This is a dirt poor kid from Virginia over here, and this is some well-to-do kid from the Upper East Coast. Never met each other before, from two totally different units. And when you're changing over in combat with two different units, they do what's called left seat, right seat. The guys that are leaving are the left seat, and the guys coming in the right seat, or vice versa. It doesn't really matter. So in this case here, these two individuals were put on a VCP, which is a vehicle checkpoint. And when we do our vehicle checkpoints, you don't just drive into our bases. You have to go through a certain time, which is like a snake. You have to go through these little barriers. But I'm sure the sergeant looked at these two knuckleheads and said, hey, you two knuckleheads, don't let any vehicles come down this road without permission. Well, after a few minutes of being on post, guess what? Big old truck with a 2,000-pound bomb starts cruising down that road. And it comes down the road, they engage, it blows up, it kills them both. But the only witnesses are Iraqi police officers. So General Kelly goes in there and he wants to talk to them, see what happened. And there's no evidence. He's like, something crazy happened here, but I can't believe I can't just go by what foreigners say. But what happened was there was a video, the video cameras, although they were all destroyed, the video machine, had recorded the event, and it only lasted 6 seconds. So these two knuckleheads who had never met each other before, so the only thing they had in common was the fact that they were United States Marines or American soldiers in combat. And they stood toe to toe, and you can tell in the video, for 2 seconds, they didn't have time to ask a lieutenant colonel, a sergeant, or a corporal. They didn't have time to ask anybody for permission to do something. They just did it. And they stood toe to toe, shoulder to shoulder, one with an M16 and one with a squad automatic weapon, and they engaged the enemy, and they stopped the driver through lead poisoning, and the vehicle stopped, it blew up, and they were killed instantly. And it told exactly what the Iraqi police officers had said. So for 2 seconds, they had to think about it, and then 4 seconds to raise hate on the bad guy and stop him. But they saved 50 Americans and 50 Iraqis' lives. Although some of them were wounded, they all lived. Thanks to them. Now think about it, that's a 2,000-pound bomb. Just to give you an idea, I could take about less than a quarter pound of explosives and blow the doors right off of this building right here. Just literally blow them open. That's a fact. That's 2,000 pounds. So it's a pretty big bomb. That's what we call a VBID, a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device. Okay, next story. This is Lance Corporal Gustafson. This kid is, his mother contacted me through Facebook long after I wrote the book. I've never actually talked to him because he's a pretty shy dude. But just listen to what he did. Now understand something, he's a Lance Corporal. He's probably the most junior Marine on this entire patrol when this happens. They're in Afghanistan. And as they're coming into the patrol, they're coming into what we call the X, the kill zone. They got into the X and they got ambushed. And when they got ambushed, an RPG, rocket propelled grenade, came through his vehicle and took his leg off. It didn't take it totally off, but it would be amputated soon. So he's severely wounded. But he didn't get out of the gun turret. He was up in an MRAP, a huge armored vehicle. But he didn't say what was me or whatever. What they do, he kept on fighting. He kept fighting while a young Marine below him put a tourniquet on him to stop the bleeding. But he kept on fighting. Not only did he keep fighting, but he got on the radio and he told them all how to get off the X. And how did he tell them to do it? By ramming their vehicles into each other and smashing and pushing each other off the kill zone. And he saved probably all of their lives by doing that. To me, that's pretty incredible. This 19-year-old kid that had the forethought to think of them more than himself. And as soon as it was over, he passed out from blood loss. But just what an incredible hero. And he got the Navy Cross, which is the second highest award a Marine can get. Okay, Corporal John R. Scully. So this is one of the most traumatic things that ever happened in my life. So one day I was in Savannah, Georgia on I-9 as first sergeant. I get a call from headquarters Marine Corps and I said, hey, you got to go down to Brunswick, Georgia, and you've got to tell the mother of Corporal John R. Scully that he was killed in combat a couple hours ago. So I'd never done this before. But I learned one thing, and that was that I was told when you're doing a CACO, Casualty Assistance Calls Officer, when you're doing one, do for the family what you'd want them to do for you, which made it pretty simple. Do the best you can. So anyway, I grabbed my team and we went down to Brunswick, Georgia. It was about an hour and 15-minute drive. And I ain't the most religious person in the world, but let me tell you something. I was praying like you wouldn't believe that. I wouldn't make a mistake and make it harder on the mom. But it was incredible. We get down there and, did you see this? I don't think I can. Yeah, there it is. All right. So anyway, we get down to the house. So, all right, so we get down there, we get down to the house, and I get out of the, okay, so down in Florida, you know what I'm talking about, right? So a few weeks before that, or a little while before that, a Marine CACO team in Florida went to a house, and we got to the front door, and the dad came to the door and saw the Marines, and he turned around and walked away and didn't say anything. So the Marines standing there, what the heck's going on? He turned around, he walked out, he walked out his back door, went out to his garage, grabbed a gallon of gas, or 2.5 gallons, poured it all over the Marines' van right in front of them, and set it on fire right in front of them. So we started using police escorts to make sure they set me on fire, you know what I'm saying? So I was brought a bodyguard with me, and we bring the police. Can you hear me okay? Then her other son showed up, and she forgot about her own pain and consoled him. And then she went back and, was upset again. And then someone else showed up, and it just went on and on. But she was always looking out for the next person. Just an incredible family. We went down to Jacksonville, Florida, because we could not receive human remains in Savannah, Georgia. So we had to go all the way to Jacksonville, Florida, which from there is probably an hour or so. But the police officers, and we had police escorts everywhere we went, state troopers and all that stuff. So we get down there to get the body, and it was getting held up over and over out of Dover. And as time was going on, I was like, oh man, this is not good. We'd been there for hours late. And I went up to a state trooper, Florida State Trooper. I said, sir, Trooper Washington. I said, sir, I'm so sorry we're late, but here's a cold Pepsi for you. He goes, well, thank you, First Sergeant. He goes, don't worry about it. We ain't going nowhere till we pick our brother up. Then he told me, he says, I was in the Army for 24 years. So we're not leaving this Marine behind. And I was like, got to me right now. But anyway, the mom, one of the first things she said to me is she goes, can I have his hog's tooth? And a hog's tooth is, we call snipers, we call them hunters of gunmen, because they hunt other guys with guns. So she asked for his hog's tooth, and I was amazed that she even knew what a hog's tooth was. I didn't know if the hog's tooth would come back with him, so I took mine off and gave it to her. So it was just a bullet at that point, and that really helped out too. So check it out. So when his body came back, I received a little tiny red bag. What do you think was in it? The only thing that was in it was the hog's tooth. Who would believe that? But then I found out 6 months later from the platoon that they knew how valuable the hog's tooth was, and they got on their hands and knees and crawled around to find that hog's tooth to send it back with his remains. The reason I tell this story is because I go extensively into what's in the book. And there's just all kinds of things about the families, the police, everything. When we brought his body in the first night to the funeral home, there was a police officer standing next to me. I was saluting as the casket came by. And once they got in the funeral home, I went over to the police officer. I said, sir, thank you very much for helping us. He goes, of course I'm going to help. He's my cousin. I was like, wow, this is a small world. Anyway, and then a few months later, when that platoon came back from combat, we put out a little memorial for them. That platoon really, really took a beating. How anyone lived through that incident is just incredible. They took a pretty bad beating. So, by the way, John was killed the day before my wife's sitting right here, before her birthday. And so I was with that family all day the day before her birthday, all day on her birthday, all day every day after her birthday for a couple weeks. And she never complained one bit. Anyway, so remember that was the 3rd of October, and you'll see here 27 days later, I go for a run. It's a Sunday. I come back from my run, and my wife never answered my government phone. But that day she did, and luckily she did. I had another Keiko. So 27 days later, I'm doing my next Keiko. And it's for Staff Sergeant Damron. But in this case here, all I had to do was go tell the mom. And when I got to the mom, to her house, she wasn't there because she was divorced, so I tell the dad, who was the coroner with a loaded gun on the desk. That didn't make me feel comfortable, but anyway. So then he told me how to get to the mom, so the police took us over to the mom, and then we went back to Savannah, and I went home and I was in the shower, and my wife comes in, she goes, hey, Headquarters Marine Corps is on the phone again. This is like 11 o'clock, and I'm like, what the heck? The wife was there. She wasn't at Camp Lejeune. So now I had to get my Keiko team together. Now she's 7.5 months pregnant. So now, I tell you, I felt so terrible. It's 1:17 in the morning, and I'm standing there telling this 7.5-month pregnant wife that her husband is dead, while her 4-year-old is hugging her legs saying, where's daddy? Man, it just ate me up. Anyway, again, we had to go all the way down to Jacksonville, Florida. We had to do our thing. The police escorts and everything. Just, the American public was incredible. In fact, he was blown up, and not all of his remains came back, so they had to send more remains later after DNA was done. And when we picked up the urn at the Savannah airport, because you could get an urn, it was just incredible to see all the American public. We didn't tell them what we were doing, just 2 Marines walking through with this 40-pound vase. By the way, I thought an urn was like a vase. I thought, just a little bit dirt. No, they weighed like 40 pounds. So anyway, I walked through with all these people getting up against the wall and doing the thing, and there was this young soldier from 3rd Infantry, he was a general's driver. And I'll never forget, we were pulling away, we're all like sitting at attention in our vehicle, and this young soldier standing there with tears coming down his eyes, saluting our vans we were going by. So I write about all these experiences in the book. And then after that, we go into Afghanistan. And this here is Doc's spirit. You see that smile? He always had that smile. Even when we were torturing him in physical fitness, he still smiled like that. But Doc was a Filipino-American. And he volunteered to join the military, volunteered to join the Navy, volunteered to go with Marine Infantry. Then he volunteered to be a sniper. Now, the only Navy personnel normally that get to go to Marine Corps Sniper School are SEALs. How he swung it, I don't know, but he did. He graduated sniper school, and when I met him, he was with 1st Battalion, 7th Marine Scout Sniper Platoon. And so they call it green side when they're with the Marines, and they call it blue side when they're with the Navy. He went back to the Navy, and he wasn't happy. He knew guys were out there getting hurt in combat. He knew he could save lives. So he volunteered to go in explosive ordnance disposal, and he was killed on an IED. They were actually on an IED working it when it blew, and he was killed. So I told his story because I think it's a pretty good story, plus the fact that, you know, he's a foreigner and he was that dedicated to our country. Corporal Will Hyatt, this kid here, okay, so this kid's a corporal. He's probably, at the time, he's probably 19 years old. He's the only infantryman American in an Afghan compound. So there's all these senior Army and Marine and Navy officers and enlisted. He's the most junior person, but he's the only infantryman. And one day he's coming out of the bathroom, the latrine, the head, whatever you want to call it, the bathroom. And it's in the middle of the night, and he's walking along, and all of a sudden he's like, what the heck, and they just got assaulted by 20 or 30 bad guys. So he runs up a hill to the observation post, and he starts engaging the enemy with his squad automatic weapon. And he's like, oh man, this ain't enough. So he's guiding, this 19-year-old American, he's guiding all the Afghans on how to engage the enemy, but it still ain't working. So he runs down, and anyone who's ever been in the military, he runs down the OP, and he gets a Mark 19. If you've ever carried a Mark 19 from the armory to 10 feet away to your vehicle, you know that they're extremely heavy. So running up a mountain is really not a lot of fun, but when you have the adrenaline going, it helps. Anyway, Will Hyatt runs this thing back up the OP, starts engaging the enemy, and he stops the assault. This Army Sergeant First Class tells a story. Well, Will he's a federal dude right now. So he's at my house one day. He works in the D.C. area, and we're talking about the story. And he told me something I did not know when I wrote the book. Any Marines know what silkies are? It's like little PT shorts, or little tiny, whatever we used to wear in the old days. Some people still wear them as a joke. But anyway, he was in silkies because he was sleeping, and so he's in silkies and shower shoes, not flip flops, shower shoes. You know they cost like 50 cents when you fall out of them in the shower. He ran up a damn mountain in flip-flops, okay? And so he says, man, it was a trip because I got, 80 pounds of weapon on me, and I'm trying to put my damn flip-flop on, and I'm getting shot at. But he went up there and engaged them, and whatever. Now, the purpose of my book is not to talk about what awards they got, but anyone that's been in the military, he got a Navy Marine Corps Commendation Medal. And I think if you were to really read the whole story, you'd realize that that's not even close to what he should have got. He probably should have had at least a Bronze Star, probably a Bronze Star with a V, I would say. Anyway, real high, good dude. Okay, so I'm a Sergeant Major, so of course I'm going to put a Sergeant Major in my book. Absolutely not. Actually, when I came to my book, I was anti-officer and anti-staff NCO. And this is a Sergeant Major. Why would I put him in there? Because he's a scout sniper buddy of mine, right? No, that's not why. That's true, but it's not why. Jim Booker was the Battalion Landing Team 2 Force Sergeant Major. That means he's a Sergeant Major of about 2,500 Marines, sailors, and some attachment soldiers. But he took it upon himself to do a few things. First of all, as soon as I got in Ramadi, he wanted to go out and get some intel, so he went out with a police officer, undercover police officer. And when they got out on their mission, they got attacked. Someone tried to assassinate him, or them. He thinks anyway. Comes to find out, after Jim kills the dude, finds out it's the OC's brother. So the OC brought him out to have him murdered. It didn't work out for either of the brothers. If you can read between the lines. All right, so anyway, another time, RPG gunners engaged in our unit, and Jim goes running through Ramadi by himself and takes out the RPG gunner. But the most impressive thing, and probably the biggest reason he's in here, is they were needing more intelligence on what the bad guys were doing. So, if you see, this is kind of out of focus, but Jim's kind of got some olive skin. So what he did is he did a little profile, a little racial profiling, and he grabbed a bunch of brown kids, and he created a reconnaissance team of the bearded guys. So he had all these Lance Corporals, 18 years old, running around with beards and stuff, and he went out and did reconnaissance, and he led the Sergeant Major and a bunch of Corporals and Lance Corporals, running around Ramadi in man dresses, and turbans, or not turbans, but the little thing there, and getting the intel, which probably saved a whole lot of lives. And that's a pretty gutsy thing to do. You can't hide a lot of weapons under your man dress. Anyway, this kid here's Marty Graham. Okay? And there's two people in my book twice, and Marty's one of them. Marty's this little tiny kid right here. Marty's about 5'3", probably 120 pounds with his 85 pounds of body armor on him. Okay? He's a little tiny dude. But he's like Audie Murphy. He's a little bag guy, little bag dude. Anyway, these were 1-6 and they were in Iraq. And their unit came under a complex assault. And he's just some young Lance Corporal. He didn't know what he was doing. But they got hit, and a round came through the roof, and it critically wounded a Marine. So he ran over to help, and a Navy corpsman came over. Corpsmen are the greatest. You know, they save a lot of Marines. So hey, he and the corpsman go over there, and they start treating the Marine. The doc says, hey, we got to get him out of here, he's going to die. So they drag him down the stairs, put him in a Humvee. So Martin's sitting in a Humvee getting ready to go, and Doc says, if we don't get him out of here right away, he's going to die. Doc takes off. He's probably going to get his med bag, his aid bag, whatever. But he wasn't fast enough for Marty. So Marty is in Ramadi. He's at a combat outpost 20 minutes from Ramadi proper. He takes off across the compound. And there was a VBIED here. I think there was a weight on it. But anyway, there was a dump truck. VBIED, and it was an M113 armored vehicle there at the gate. So this armored vehicle and dump truck are both on fire. And he even tells in the award, it was a 50-foot wall of flames. And Marty comes flying up, didn't even wait for the corpsman, didn't have a gunner, didn't have it. It was all by himself, this Lance Corporal, with a casualty in the back. He goes flying across the compound, he slams into this ball of fire, and he pushes and he pushes and he pushes as his skin's being burned, his hair is burning, but he knows this kid's going to die if he doesn't keep going. And he pushes through and he takes off, and he went for 20 minutes to Ramadi proper. And usually when I tell people, I say, if you don't understand how long 20 minutes is, I'll come over and I'll punch you in the face for 20 seconds, and then you can have an idea, just add it up and you'll get your 20 minutes. Okay, so my point is, 20 minutes is a very long time when you're 19 years old, going through Iraq all by yourself. It's incredible. He actually rolled by the QRF, which is a quick reaction force. It was to escort him. He just blew by him and took off without him. But when he got there, the doctor said, if you had not got him here when he did, he would be dead. Now, Marty was at my house one day. I like to have my type of combat psychology is sitting around a bonfire and just talking. But anyway, he's sitting around. He goes, you know what? He says, that kid we saved. He goes, I couldn't stand him. So he's like, he said it was a corporal and he was always harassing him. But he says, yeah, he was going to die. So I figured I better fix it. I better help him. Anyway, so 18 months later, young Marty is in Afghanistan. Same kid, Afghanistan. And they're doing a vertical envelopment, which is a helicopter raid. And 2 squads are coming in on their helicopter. They land, no problem. They're headed towards a possible cache of weapons. They're pretty sure it's there. They're on the way there to check it out. But they get ambushed on the way there. So there's 2 squads, reinforced squads. There's probably about 20, 25 of these guys. And they're pinned down. So Marty's like, the heck with this, I ain't going to get pinned down no more. So he grabs 2 Marines and they envelop. All on his own, he envelops the bad guys. And this little, all-American little midget here, little clown boy here, he engaged the enemy with his M16, his 40mm 203 grenade launcher, these hand grenades. He took them out with hand-to-hand combat, and then he detained some, all by himself. Okay, the other 2 said, hey, look, yeah, we were just supporting cast. We just watched them, basically. But that little kid did all that on his own, and basically saved a whole bunch of lives. Okay, so that's my book, and there's plenty of stories there, and Tommy, is the bookstore here? Anyway.
Find out.
Okay,
Find
anyway.
out after.
Okay, so if you want to read about some heroes, they're in the book. Okay, that's not really what I want to talk about. I really want to talk about this. How many of you in here were never in the military? Quite a few, I would imagine. So, probably about half. Okay, so hopefully you can get a lot out of this also. This isn't just for military people. You can help me get the word out. And nothing here I'm going to say is not going to make sense to you. I assure you of that. So post-traumatic stress disorder, we hear all about it, And I'm not anti-President Obama. It's just a picture I pulled off. Okay? Veterans and guns. If you all don't know, there's been multiple times where people have said that there are people who say veterans should not be allowed to own guns. Veterans. Because they're crazy, because they got PTSD. Let me tell you something. Every sexual assault victim, every rape victim, every major car accident victim, if you're a mom, your kids died in a car, you're going to have PTSD. So if you're going to take away PTSD, guns from people with PTSD for the military, you're going to take it away from everybody. It's ridiculous. Okay? And just because you have PTSD doesn't mean you're a psychopath. Psychopaths are psychopaths. PTSD does not make you crazy. Okay? All right, so I go around and I've given speeches in multiple other countries to tens of thousands of people. I give this speech that's called Surviving Combat, which is actually based on my first book, which is right here. You can have that if you want, Tommy. So I don't make any money on that book. I could have, but you know what? If you don't know, an author makes about $1 a book. Believe it or not, you don't really make much. So I thought people's lives were much more important than that dollar, so I just gave it out for free, military and police only. But anyway, I give these speeches to educate them on what happens to your mind in combat, so that you don't think you're crazy. You know, I'll get into this in much more detail as we go along. Anyway, I call it sunscreen and exit wounds. Okay, when I say sunscreen is that if I educate you on what's going to happen to you in combat in your mind, when it happens to you, you're not going to be surprised. And the reason I say exit wounds, anyone here that's done anything with medical knows that you don't look for just the entrance wound. You got to look for the exit wound too, because that might be where most of the damage is. You know, there's damage entrance, in the middle, and out. In fact, exit wounds can be 30, 40 times as big as the entrance wounds, and it can do much more damage. Am I wrong, Erin? Okay, she's a nurse, so maybe she knows a little bit. Anyway, so I call my class, like I gave, sunscreen to keep them from getting a sunburn, that psychological sunburn, and the exit wounds is to educate you on, you know, to look for not what you think is there. I'll give you an example. When I was a kid, I was playing football with my little brother, and someone else playing all-time quarterback. So it was one-on-one with all-time quarterback. And my brother caught the ball, and he's running. I went to tackle him, wrapped my arms around him, and his foot came to it, and he broke my nose. So he's my little brother, so of course I had to punch him in the head, because that's what big brothers do. But I broke my hand. God broke it really bad. And my mom was trying to fix my nose with all the blood. I'm like, the hell with my nose? Look at my damn hand. That's my point, is that hand was much worse than the nose, but what you saw first was the nose. And that, if you can take that into the psychology world, you can understand what I'm saying. It's not always what you think that you see that is the biggest problem. That was my brother Donnie, by the way. And I've got relatives here that know about stuff like this. Anyway, so when I was a first sergeant in I-9, Savannah, Georgia, I had just finished this book, Surviving Combat. And one of my college professors called me on a Sunday and he says, hey, I've got a kid I go to church with. His parents are afraid he's going to commit suicide. This kid is out of his mind. He was from the 3rd Infantry out of Fort Stewart in Georgia. And I was at Hunter Army Airfield in Georgia, working with a Marine detachment there. Anyway, he called me up and asked me for help. I mean, how could I say no? So I got in my uniform, or I went to work, got in uniform, waited at Hunter Army Airfield for this young soldier to show up. Now understand something. I am a first sergeant. I'm the second highest rank you can possibly be in the Marine Corps enlisted. Okay? This kid is an Army specialist, which is, you know, a very junior soldier, you know. And so Marine, soldier, higher rank, lower rank, doesn't work out all that well. Anyway, he shows up. Things aren't going that well. He doesn't want to listen. But anyway, at one point, he mentioned the city of Karbala in Iraq. Well, luckily for me, I've been to Karbala. So I knew where his places were. So I said, hey, you ever been to this place? You ever been to that place? And it built a rapport. So we started getting along a little bit better, but I still wasn't really getting through to this kid. And so at one point, actually, to be honest with you, I got frustrated. I was like, look, dude, what is your problem? There's got to be one thing that's really upsetting you more than the others. He goes, well, I'll tell you what first. I'll tell you what it is. He says, we're a bunch of murderers. I said, okay, well, tell me about your murder. Your murder spree, buddy. That was a little sarcasm there. And he goes, well, let me tell you what happened. And I'm going to tell you the story, and without me finishing, I'm going to bet everyone in this room can answer the question before I'm done. Or, you know, tell me what happened. So they're at a VCP, vehicle checkpoint, and a bus comes down the road. If you don't know, the American forces, we're very cautious of how we do things with civilians. We have signs that say, in Arabic, say, don't come any further, slow down. Don't come any further. If you come any further, we are going to shoot you. So here comes this bus, comes down the road, doesn't slow down, doesn't stop, keeps on going. The soldiers from 3rd Infantry engage that bus, it stops due to lead poisoning. And they got up to the bus. Who's in the bus? Come on, man, who's in the bus? Women and children, of course. Okay? So he said to me, he says, we murdered those people that day. I said, no, you killed them, but you didn't murder them. I said, did you know that it was civilians? Did you know it was women and children in there? He says, well, no, I couldn't have known. I said, well, murder requires premeditation. People get killed in combat. Unfortunately, that's terrible. But people die in combat. That's all there is to it. Soldiers and civilians die in combat. So I had to explain to him something, and I actually carry this with me to blow people away, because what does the Bible say anyway? Thou shalt not, what is it? Anyone know? Thou shalt not what? Thou shalt not kill. Okay? But I can open this book up to this green part right here, and I can have anyone that wants to read it, and it says thou shalt not murder. Murder. So it depends on, every Bible is a little bit different. There's different versions of them. And it was, it was translated from another language, that's why. So, anyway, I had to explain to him that there's a difference between murder and killing. Killing is the justifiable taking of life. Murder is unjustifiably taking life. And he needed to understand it. But you know what? No one had ever taught him that. And that's why I teach my pre-combat classes, to make people understand that. But hey, listen, we don't want to kill civilians. Only psychopaths want to do that. And if you all don't know, how many students are at UNC, by the way? Anyone know? Approximately? Is there 20,000? About 2% of them are psychopaths, okay? Statistically. So there's psychopaths on this campus right now. Probably there's one in this room right now. I'm just kidding. See that one right there? Anyway, he wants to be a nurse too. Anyway, I had to educate him on that, okay? The other thing that got to him was, he told me, he says, I couldn't believe it. He says, we came back, after that incident, he says, I saw soldiers smoking and joking and laughing, not about the incident, but like nothing had ever happened. And I explained to him, I says, understand something. That's, people react in different ways. You have something that's called, in combat, you have something that's called survivor euphoria, which means that you won the fight. The bad guy's trying to kill you and you're trying to kill them. And you won that battle. And it's a euphoric feeling to know that someone was just trying to murder you or trying to kill you and you killed them first. It is a euphoric feeling. And sometimes it can be misunderstood as something that is like you were happy that you killed people. If you're a psychopath, you were happy. But more than likely, most people are not. Okay? Say again?
I'm just happy I did.
Exactly. Like I say, survivor euphoria. Okay, so I gave a speech in Washington, D.C. at the VA hospital. They wanted me to come in. They considered me a subject matter expert on this. So I came in and I talked on their CCTV, which is closed circuit TV, all over the country, all over the wherever. So anyway, I was trying to help them to help warriors. And so I just wanted to mention a couple things that I told them, because I think it's important. And I told them, I said, you got to stop wearing them damn lab coats. Lab coats are designed to what? Protect you from blood and other liquids and stuff like that, right? So why would a psychologist wear a lab coat and to talk to me about my brain? It bothers me, okay? There was a psychologist, is there any psychology students or professors they want to hear? Do you remember there was a long time ago, there was a study where they had these, this is a long time ago. Yeah, it was really unethical with electricity. So they have a dude come in there and he's got a lab coat on. And he tells them to put electricity onto it's all fake. And they pretend to, but these people with the guy in the lab coat, they would turn the shock up so high that it would have been lethal, it would have killed them. But when you put someone in there, a layperson with civilian clothes, they would not do it. So that lab coat means something. It really does mean something. I know why they wear it because it's a status symbol. But you shouldn't be doing that when you're on me, when you talk about my brain. But there's reasons that veterans are not totally honest, especially with the VA. Because a lot of veterans, to include me, don't totally trust the VA. Here's some of the things that veterans are concerned with. And I bet most of the veterans in here are going to probably shake their heads as I'm going through this list. Okay, they're afraid that it might hurt their career. Or that it is a perceived weakness or embarrassment. Will I lose my gun rights? Are they listening kept? Reports, evidence. Fact. And someone in a VA, from the state of California asked the VA to give up information on the mental health of veterans in the state of California so they could go after their gun rights. Wow. If you don't know, you can go into look into VA's little bylaws and that stuff there, or whatever you want to call them. And it says it, one of the things it says when they'll give up medical information, one of them it says upon request from law enforcement. What does that mean? Does that mean a cop can come off the street and say, I want this information? I have no idea what that means. No one can tell me what it means either. So veterans are kind of scared of the VA and them giving up their information. Okay. Okay. Another problem that you have with a lot of these, especially the former military guys and gals, they'll talk to a veteran, these mental health people, they'll talk to veterans, yeah, I was in Afghanistan 3 times, whatever. Dude, you're talking to some infantryman who's out there bashing heads of the bad guys, and you're going to compare your time on Al-Assad in Iraq eating ice cream to his time out there? It's not good. It doesn't build rapport. What they should do is say, hey, look, I was in Afghanistan 3 times, but I never saw what you saw. But understand something, that's a good thing. It's good that I did not go through what you went through because I can be totally objective that way. The problem is when you start adding this subjectivity and psychology, okay, I can never be a psychologist, and here's the reason. Transference and countertransference. And that's where the psychologist starts empathizing so much with the patient that they're unable to be objective. So I know I can do it. Because when I'm talking to young soldiers and sailors and Marines and airmen that have problems, I mean, I get very emotional with them, so I'm not the right guy for it. I'm good at teaching classes like this, but not the guy in the room taking care of them. Okay, so persona. Does anyone know what an actual persona is? The word persona. Does anyone know what it means? That's they called the people in the plays back then, and they would put on that mask. So if I put on the persona, that mask, if it was a man put on a woman's mask, he became a woman, that actor. Or if he put on a dragon, he was a dragon. Or she put on a tiger, she became a tiger. So you hide it, and that's why we use the term persona now. It's that mask we hide behind. Okay, I speak about Marines a lot because I'm a Marine. Okay, a former retired Marine. Okay, Marines are God, and I think everyone in this room probably knows whether you're in the Marine Corps or not. That we're a bunch of, whatever. That's our persona. Even when we're not maybe that strong, we still want to put out project that power. You know what I'm saying? So if you want to help people, if you want to help veterans, or anyone with psychological issues, whatever, you got to be able to get in behind that mask, behind that persona. Okay, so a while back, it was all over the news. Some of you may have heard this. There was a young soldier who was being treated on an army base by a psychologist, and the psychologist was a Islamic man. Okay, so he was Arab American, Islamic, wearing his religious stuff and everything, and the soldier said, no, you're not treating me. So what did the army do? Of course, he said, you'll do what the hell you're told to do, which is the wrong thing to do. Understand something, and this is for any veterans or anyone else. I should have whoever I want to help me. If I want, some men would rather talk to a woman about that, because if I got combat, stress, I might rather talk to a woman because I don't want the man to think I'm perceived I'm weak, or vice versa. I might rather talk to a man because I don't want the woman to think I'm weak. Whatever I want is what I should get. And if I want religion to be involved or not involved, it should be up to me. Whether I want to be an atheist or a Catholic or a Muslim, it doesn't matter. It should be up to that soldier to choose. And it blows my mind that the DOD would allow something like this to happen. And if you do the same thing, you'll take what you get. It's ridiculous. Okay, so proximity matters. Proximity is closeness, obviously. Okay? So I'm not trying to put down artillery guys or air guys. Let me tell you, pilots are amazing. I wouldn't be alive today if it wasn't for pilots. Okay? I wouldn't be alive today probably if it wasn't for artillerymen. But there's a big difference between sitting 30 kilometers away, throwing an MRAP or throwing a wrap round with artillery and getting a BDA, battle damage assessment, over a radio than shooting somebody in the face from 10 feet away. There's a huge difference. The closer you are, the more it affects you psychologically. Obviously, I don't think I need to explain any more to you. But A dead check, if you don't know, a dead check is if you shoot an enemy and you need to ensure that they're dead, you thump them in the eyeball. Because if you're faking that you're dead, and I thump you in the eye, you will move. If anyone would like to test it, come on up here. I'll thump you in the eye and try not to move. Okay? Or thump your spouse tonight when I'm sleeping. Anyway, that's a joke. Absolutely a joke. Anyway, so when you add all these things in there, it all makes a difference. Seeing death is not that hard to do in combat. Lots of people see death. How close are you though? But hearing it, smelling it, and tasting it. And let me tell you, the taste of death is almost impossible to articulate. If you knew what I meant by the taste of death, I don't need to explain to you what I'm talking about. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, there's no way I could possibly explain to you. But I'll try. It's just like nickel taste in the back of your mouth. There's no explanation whatsoever for it. This taste in your mouth, it's undescribable, but it's unforgettable also. So you add all these factors and they all matter in the amount of combat psychology you can have. Okay, so when I was a young kid growing up in upstate New York, I remember in the summer times it get really, really hot, and you see these amazing lightning storms coming out of the west. And back when I was a kid, we didn't have air conditioners and stuff in New York. We didn't need it. We needed heaters. But in the summertime, there would always be a few days when it would be really hot. So a lot of times when it's really hot nights, the neighborhood, people would just be outside, just sweltering, whatever. And you'd watch these storms. And if you watch a lightning storm from miles away, they're actually pretty beautiful. But the closer they hit, the less beautiful they are. And when they hit, your house or hit you, it's a lot worse. Okay? So that's a good example of how proximity matters. Okay, and I already mentioned this is survivor euphoria. This is a major problem with some veterans where they feel bad after the fact, like, oh, wow, how could I feel good about killing people? And like I said, they get confused with the euphoric feeling of surviving the game, surviving the battle. And they might say to themselves, oh, how could I feel good about killing another human being? You don't feel good about killing another human being. You feel good about surviving. Okay, so survivor's guilt. This is a huge, huge threat to to any population. It doesn't have to be military. Anyone who's dealt with death. Survivor's guilt. You hear military members all the time coming out of combat go, oh man, I'll give you an example. Okay, so this Marine tells me a story. He's all messed up on it. He's like, yeah. He says, man, it's my friend's fault that he's dead. Or it's my fault my friend is dead. So, okay, so tell me the story. I always say that when people tell me silly things. He says, okay, I was on guard post. I was supposed to go on patrol. My buddy says, hey, dude, don't worry about it. I'll take your patrol. So I stayed on post, and he went on patrol, and he died when they ran over IED, improvised explosive device. He goes, so it's my fault. I should have been the one that died. I'm like, dude, did you know there was an IED there? Did you know they were going to run over it? If not, how could it be your fault? Who do you think you are? You're going to take credit for that? You can't take credit for that. It's ridiculous. Anyway, what I do tell them is, don't be so damn selfish. Live for them, they die for us. Here's what I always tell people when they start getting this survival guilt crap. I said, let me tell you something. If you died, would you want your friends to have terrible lives? Of course they say no. Then why would you? Listen, if your friend died for you, then why don't you live the best life you can be? Be the best human being you can be. Be the best husband, wife, brother, sister, cousin, friend, college student, driver on the road. Be the best human being you can possibly be because they died so that you could survive. So for you not to be the best person you can be makes you a very selfish person. And that usually wakes people up right there. Okay? But listen, going around and beating your children and your wife and being an alcoholic jackass is no way to honor your friends. That's for damn sure. Okay? How dare you waste the life they gave you? That's what I tell them. Okay? All right, so Chris Kyle was a Navy SEAL sniper, and he was killed by a Marine, a former Marine, that had been diagnosed with PTSD. Did you all know that? Okay, so he murdered a guy with PTSD. He was diagnosed with PTSD from the VA. But did y'all know that the guy he'd never been to combat? His PTSD was from Haiti, from the humanitarian crisis. So it wasn't this psychopath in combat. So the news media knows, oh, he got PTSD. He did. From Haiti, from watching all the crazy things that happened there. Had nothing to do with combat. So it's a little deceptive thing there. Anyway, so people call him a barbarian. Let me tell you something right now. There's 3 kinds of people on this earth. Only 3. Okay? You got wolves. 2% of the society are wolves. They prey on the sheep. 96% of the society are sheep. And then 2% are the sheepdogs. Those are your EMS people. Those are your firefighters, your police officers, your military, etc. Okay? So, but everyone knows what the bell curve is, I'm sure. So you got the psychopaths over here who are the wolves, and then you got the sheepdogs over here, and then you got the sheep in the middle. Well, in that 96%, you got some that are darn near wolves, and some that are darn near whatever. So you got everything in between. But a lot of times you'll find the sheep don't like the sheepdog. Because what does the sheepdog do? He keeps them independent. He tells them what to do, and he makes them do things, and it makes them mad. Okay? But he's always trying to protect them from that. So that's just how it is. So I try to explain to people that he was not a barbarian. Chris Kyle saved lives. He saved a lot of lives. He took lives. It always amazes me, and I'm not saying this because I'm a Scout sniper. It amazes me when I hear people say, oh, Scout snipers, they're cowards. Who was it? Michael Moore said it. They're cowards. Oh, really? Well, let me explain something real quick. I'll make this really simple for you. Tell me any other job in the U.S. military that can pick out the enemy, know for a fact of the enemy, and engage them with 0 collateral damage. There is no other job that can do that. There is none. Snipers are the only people that know for sure it's a bad guy, they select them, and they destroy them, and nothing else gets harmed. Most of the time. Because they hit most of the time. But anyway, so calling him a coward is crazy. Now, PTSD. And oh my God. Does everyone remember this guy here? He was in California. He's from Florida, but he had diagnosed with PTSD. He was a United States Marine. He was getting treated in California, and he decided to go down towards Tijuana. If you don't know, you can park in California, you can walk to Tijuana. He walked to Tijuana, partied, came back, got in his truck, and he got into a lane. You got to do a little U-turn to get back in the United States. He got in the wrong lane, and it took him into Mexico. So when he got to the gate, he says, hey, look, I was just trying to get back to the United States. I've got guns in my truck. Well, they put him in jail for, I think it was like 8 months or something like that. Well, Montel Williams, if you don't know, he was a Navy former commander in the Navy. And he goes in, and he's like, oh my, he's talking to Congress. He's like, we've got to get this guy out of here. He's got PTSD, you know. And Montel Williams, he's trying to do the right thing. He's trying to get this kid out of Mexico. It should have been a State Department, not Montel Williams. Okay, but he's like, oh my God, we got to get him out of here. He's going to die. Like PTSD doesn't kill anyone. Listen, PTSD has never robbed a bank. It's never beat a wife. It's never beat a child. It's never done anything wrong. It's just, it doesn't do anything. It affects your mind some, but it doesn't create any of these monster things. It's just used as an excuse a lot, that's for sure. But anyways, you have the news media and Montel Williams and all these people exploiting PTSD to the advantage of this dude here, when it should have been as simple as the State Department looking at Mexico and saying, this is a silly mistake, keep his guns, give us our guy back. Pretty simple to me. But anyway, it hurt us all in my opinion, because that kind of crap there, come on, you gotta be laughing at this picture, aren't you? Anyway, okay, so I'll give you a better example. PTSD. Anyone who's learned psychology at all knows what the DSM-5 is. The DSM-5 is a diagnostic statistical manual, 5th edition, and that is the manual that tells you all the psychological disorders. All of them, okay? So in it is PTSD. The problem is, when you go down that criteria, it'll say, okay, if you have 4 of the 5 of these, go to the next category. And you keep working your way down the list. And if you go all the way to the bottom of the list, you have PTSD. So it's kind of like you're pregnant. You're either pregnant or you're not, right? But you could be 1 day pregnant, you could be 9 months pregnant. There's a big difference in the two. It's the same way to be PTSD, though, okay? So PTSD, the overwhelming majority of people who have been diagnosed with PTSD from the VA are only a couple pounds overweight with PTSD. I'm using weight as my example. So if I'm only a couple pounds overweight, I can go walk around the block and lose that. Okay? If I'm 5 pounds overweight, I can go run a mile and lose 5 pounds. If I'm 10 pounds overweight, I might need a buddy. Go run for lunch together. You know, to lose that 10 pounds, maybe up to 20. If I'm a 20 pounds overweight, I might need a nutritionist, which might be a psychologist. But if I'm 100 pounds overweight and something doesn't do something, I'm going to die. So there's my example. Now, I've worked with literally hundreds of people who have been diagnosed with PTSD. I have never met one, not one, that was debilitated by PTSD. PTSD is a factor. So, okay, so check it out. So, in fact, I'll get to an example here in a minute. So understand, it's kind of like being overweight. You can be a little bit overweight or a lot overweight. But that's not how VA looks at it. Either you are or you are not. That's how they look at it. So we call it self-aid, buddy aid, corpsman aid, or medic aid, and doctor aid. Working your way down was whatever. Okay, so if y'all don't know, there's an earthquake on Earth every 25 minutes. Anyone know that? Every 25 minutes is an earthquake. But how many do you hear of? You hear about one every 2 or 3 years because a whole bunch of people die in it. Well, you think about it. There's 20,000 earthquakes on Earth every year and you never hear about it. It's kind of like with PTSD. Even though, you know, most earthquakes that hit the scale don't do any real damage at all. Okay? So, but when people hear PTSD, they hear it's like earthquake. When you hear earthquake, what do you think? You think San Francisco, you know, 100 and whatever years ago, you know, the cow kicked over to whatever and all that crap. Anyway, let me see. Okay, so Dr. Dave Grossman, he wrote On Combat. He talks about nothing makes a warrior feel worse than feeling like they're crazy, or they're atypical, or an anomaly. And let me tell you something. Human beings have been around for tens of thousands of years. And if you think that you are so unique that no one else has ever felt what you felt, you're crazy. Okay? Somebody else has told me. Somebody else has come off of a patrol and flew up behind the vehicle saying, "Oh my God, we killed people." Someone else is giving a high five while smoking a cigarette saying, "Holy crap, did you see that?" You know? Survivor euphoria. Okay? But you got to make sure that they understand, or I say you have to make sure that the warriors understand that there's nothing wrong with you if you threw up behind a vehicle. There's also nothing wrong with you if you didn't throw up behind a vehicle. They're just normal reactions to an adverse situation. Okay, fearing the night. Lots and lots of warriors fear the night. I used to fear the night too. I used to fear it because I didn't, you know, it wasn't just the memories and the, you know, what is the difference between a nightmare and a dream? Nothing. One's bad and one's good. They're still dreams, okay? But I had trouble sleeping, so I was taking Ambien. And, you know, a lot of veterans are taking Ambien and they're drinking alcohol. You know what they say? If you're using alcohol to numb your mind or to go to sleep every night, dude, you need to go get help. Go get help. Because I'm telling you right now, you need help. If alcohol is your way around things, or illegal drugs, or even legal drugs used improperly, you got problems. Go get some help. Absolutely. But fearing the night, so when you're in combat, the enemy is the enemy. But then you come home and then you're scared to go to sleep. And I like that picture because it's like you're being torn to pieces and stuff, and it bothers people. But so when it was about 2012, I was diagnosed with sleep apnea. And so with sleep apnea, you get this machine. It's called a CPAP, and what it does is it breathes for you. So you know, I used to wake. If you have sleep apnea, you wake up multiple times every night and all that. But this machine makes you. For me, it puts me to sleep almost immediately. And I thought to myself, you know what? I stopped having bad dreams because of that thing, or dreams in general. I said, wow. I looked up. There's empirical data that shows that this is a good way to stop all the nightmares for veterans. Okay. Now, so why don't they just give them to everybody? Because it's expensive, that's why. Well, you know, it is expensive, right? I mean, I don't know because the VA gives me one, but I'm sure it's not cheap. But if you find that you have sleep, do you think the machines are incredible?
Yeah, my wife appreciates it.
But, so what I tell people, what I'm telling you is if you are a veteran and you're having issues with sleeping, go get a sleep study. And you can even ask them, hey, can I get your CPAP? You know, can I do it? I'm telling you, I put my head back, I put that machine on, and I sleep like that. Where before that, man, I would lay back, and part of my problem was my mind was always racing, always. And I would ruminate, and I would just lay in there, and I just couldn't, and especially if I had to get to sleep, then I could never sleep. I could never, and I'd wake up just exhausted, or I'd hit 2 Ambien when you can only take 1, and I'd wake up the next day and I'm totally exhausted. So yeah, I was abusing Ambien and other things, and like trying to get sleep, and trying to get rid of all the problems I had. But anyway, the CPAP helped a lot. They say the lack of sleep exacerbates your post-traumatic stress. Vince Lombardi said, fatigue makes cowards of us all. Okay? Okay, so memory retention. I'm sure a lot of you have heard this before. If an instructor tells you something, you'll only remember 15%. If they tell you and show you, you'll learn 32.6%. I'm joking when I say that, okay? And if they show you and you do it and all this, whatever, all those percentages are a bunch of garbage because it really doesn't matter. But it does matter. You can't put a percentage on it, but if I'm just standing here talking to you. Most of you aren't going to remember most of the stuff I said here. Hopefully you'll remember some of it. But because I'm showing you it, some of the stuff's you're going to remember it a little bit better. But I use when I'm teaching something called EDIT. Explain, demonstrate, imitate, practice, and test. What that means, I'll explain to you what I want you to do, and this is probably good for like in the military or a lot of jobs, actually, even in medical. You explain it to them, you demonstrate it to them, and then they imitate it with you supervising them, then they practice on their own, and then the test is whatever you're going to do that they prove that they learned that they wanted to learn. So it's called EDIT. Anyway, and also works, that's when we're talking about learning, but we're also talking about bad memories also. So when I see it, and I hear it, and I smell it, and I taste it, each time you add another factor on there, it's more ingrained into my brain. And it's going to be in my memory a lot more, you know what I mean. I don't know. Anyway, okay, trying not to think about it. This is a Marine Corps EOD tech here. And sometimes the bad guys would use what they call remote-controlled improvised explosive devices. So they'd use garage door openers, or they'd use the little key fobs, or they use cell phones, or whatever. So in this case here, this is a Marine gunny. He's over the IED, getting right into whatever, and it blew up on him. But he lived. So he knows whoever did it is looking at him, so he gave him the finger. So I thought it was pretty cool. Anyway, say again? Yeah. Believe he's not happy. He's really not happy. It's hard to tell them, and you can see his leg. He's pretty badly wounded. But yeah, he wanted to give him the finger on his way out. So right now, I want you to think about this. Okay, so right now, everybody in this room, believe me, you weren't thinking about it, I'm going to tell you right now. Everybody in this room is probably wearing shoes, and they probably got a belt around their waist, whatever. And now that I've said that, more than likely, every one of you can feel your shoes right this second. And you can feel your trousers around your waist and stuff. You're like, oh man, whatever. Okay, so now, what I want you to do is stop thinking about it. Forget that you have shoes on, and forget that you got a belt on. Okay? Go ahead. Right now, stop. The point is, it's impossible. You cannot not think about something. What I would tell you is, a way around it is actually to think about it. And think it through. Think it all the way through. If you try to bury a memory, man, when they come out like this, think about this. If I buried you in the ground and you worked your way out, when you came after me, man, you would not be happy. Well, those memories are that way too. You try to bury that bad memory, when it comes out, it's going to be pissed. And everyone's going to know it too. Okay, so I have to put out a warning here. You cannot unsee or unhear what I'm about to tell you and show you. Okay? All right, so this here's a picture. This is in Guam. This is at Tulafufu Falls in Guam. A Japanese soldier, for 27 years after World War II, hid at these falls and lived off the jungle for 27 years because the planes were going off and taking off after World War II, but then we kept the base there. There's Anderson Air Base. So, Air Force Base. So there were always planes. So he thought the war was going on for 27 years. So now it's a little place. So we're at that waterfall, And I jump off of that waterfall right there. I jump into the water, and when I turned around, I looked up, and a tree came down and landed right where I was standing. A full tree. I never thought about the fact that a tree would go over a waterfall. It never crossed my mind. So if I jumped, 5 seconds later, I probably would have been dead. Anyway, so now, I would like everyone to just, you don't have to, but I'd like you to close your eyes and just, I want to give you an example. So just please close your eyes, and I want you to go on a little adventure with me. Okay, so I'm taking you to a house, we get to the front door, and I'm going to tell you right now, we're going to go in this house, and we're going to go, and we're going to find there's a hanger. There's one hanger, like you close a clothes hanger. It's in the house. So we go in, we go into the front door, and we look in there, and there's no furniture, there's nothing. No, there's no hanger in here, so we go into the kitchen, there's nothing there. We go into each of the bedrooms. Finally, we get into the back bedroom, we open up the closet door, and bam, there's the hanger. It's hanging there on the rail. So, but then we look on the hanger, and there's a pink nightie on it, a negligee thing, right? Okay? So, you're thinking, wow, what is this thing doing here? So then you open your eyes, go ahead and open your eyes, and that's what you see. Okay? So now, yeah, that's me. Okay? So check it out. So now some of you are going to walk away tonight going, oh my God, it's the funniest thing I've ever seen. But then there's other people here going, oh my God, what the hell's wrong with this dude? Okay? And then there's everything in between. Okay? So someone here is going to be 103 years old, and their kid's going to go, what was the most memorable thing in your life? And you're like, that son of a bitch in that speech with that damn negligee. Okay? It's going to mess your head up. But this is actually a good example of combat, because you cannot not think about something, but also the exact same thing you saw. I'll take that off so you don't go blind. But what people see here, everyone in here, that would have affected differently. You know what I mean? Some think that's a stupid thing to do, some think it's a smart thing to do, and everything in between. And whatever. So take from it what you want. Okay, so let's talk about memory a little bit more. Okay, so your memory is like an iceberg. They say that everything you've ever learned is in your brain. Everything. There's an old TV show called Married with Children. And Kelly Bundy was this little blonde girl. She's dumb as a bag of rocks, okay? In the show. She's really not, but in the show. And one time, she was on this TV show, and she had to answer these as a trivia questions. And if you ever watch the show, you know that Al Bundy scored 4 touchdowns in one football game. So in the show, the final question of it was, who scored 4 touchdowns in the game, and it was her own dad. She couldn't answer it because somebody had put something in her brain right before the show and brought it up the top. You can only remember 10 to 15% of what you've learned before. Okay? But if you think about it, there's times where you might hear something, but then you remember what happened to you back when you were 10 years old. You probably misremember it, but you think you remember it. Okay? So you pulled it up from there. But you can only maintain a certain amount of it. And the reason I put this in here is, man, there's a lot of pissed off veterans in this country. A lot of angry veterans. If you want to know, go look at Facebook. They're all pissed off at everything. So if you can only have 10-15% of your brain, of your capacity can be up there, why the hell would you fill it up with being pissed off? It doesn't make any sense. Lighten up, man. You know, it amazes me, you got these veterans go, oh, civilians don't understand me. Well, no kidding, they don't understand you. Didn't you join the military so they didn't have to? Come on, man. Okay. Physical, I tell you, I've been really surprised. Here at UNC, oh my God, there's people running everywhere all the time. Might be because the weather's nice, but dude, there's people running all over the place. But that's a good thing. And let me tell you, the reason I bring this up is, I don't care if you're in the military or whatever. Physical fitness is important to everybody. And I'm not talking about being a PT instructor. I'm talking about getting away from everything else. Physical fit, going for a walk, going for a run, getting your brain out. Coming out of your class and going right back and writing your paper is not a good idea. Get out of your class, go get some food. Maybe write your paper, get pissed off, go for a run, come back and finish your paper. It's probably a lot better bet. But when we become busy, the first thing to go is usually physical fitness. Okay, but physical fitness is not just good for your body, it's good for your brain. It's also good to clear your mind. So I just wanted to make that understood. Okay, so is there anyone in this room that has not heard 22 vets a day? 22 vets a day, what does that mean? Committing suicide, right? Okay, so when people hear that, a lot of times they're thinking, oh my God, all these kids are coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan and are killing themselves, 22 a day. That is absolutely not true in any way. Not at all. They're saying veterans. And now we don't know if it's 22 or it's 19. We don't know what it is. Let's say it is 22. And one is, you say one is too many? Okay, one's too many. I give it to you. But suicide's been around forever and it's not going anywhere. I'm telling you right now. People commit suicide. You can't stop. I want to commit suicide right now. There's not a damn thing you can do to stop me. Okay? So accept it. Okay? It doesn't mean not try to help your friends. And I'll get into that more. But anyway, 22 vets a day. Understand though, who are those vets that are killing themselves? They're people that are in terrible pain and lonely and stuff like that. And they're World War II veterans, and Korean veterans, and Vietnam veterans, and Gulf War veterans, and current veterans. But if you looked at 22 a day, the number of the current veterans that have actually been to combat is probably more like 2 or 3. Okay? And if you look at that compared to society, it might even actually be less than the average rate of suicide. So us constantly, these veterans constantly pushing this 22 a day. I hear it on the news. I hear it every day. I see it on Facebook. 22 a day. Tattoos on the neck and 22 push-ups and all this. The hell with it. Why don't you spend 22 minutes with a veteran? How about that? Do something with your time. You know, putting up a post on Facebook isn't helping anybody. Okay? All right, so I said this before. PTSD's never robbed a bank, it's never beat a child, it's never beat a wife, it's never created alcoholism, whatever. And I already told you it's not just the young ones. Altruistic, okay? Altruistic suicide is our biggest threat. So survivor guilt, but you've got altruistic suicide. It's like these, if you don't know, the suicide bombers, they're called altruistic bombers because they believe they're doing the right thing. So why do people commit themselves or commit suicide? No one will care. That's the thing. No one's going to notice. Or I'm a burden on my family and friends. Or life means nothing. I am lonely is one of the worst ones. Man. You know someone's lonely, go make them not lonely. All right? We cannot save them all. You've got to understand it. Suicide's been around for thousands of years. It's not going anywhere. But we should do everything we can to limit those numbers. But we need to look at them realistically, too. The person has free will. So I'm going to tell you, I had permission from this guy. So this Marine was a Camp Lejeune. He was a scout sniper, and he was having a lot of problems. So I brought him up to my command at Quantico, Virginia. My colonel asked me to bring him up. I brought him up, and we started to take care of him. And then, so he had received a Silver Star in combat, which is Silver Star, third highest award in combat. That's a big deal. Okay. So this is a scout sniper. Gets a Silver Star. He's doing fine. But he comes home. Now, this is where I'm going. Okay. So he'll tell you everything, all his problems are PTSD. But I'm going to tell you what really happened. When he came back from combat, he had combat stress a little bit. But when he came back, he found out his wife was cheating on him. His wife was a drug addict. He had 2 houses he was renting out, and he lived in one. So he had 3 mortgages. She hadn't paid any of the mortgages in 7 months. This kid is now 23, 24 years old. He's $1.3 million in debt. His wife's cheating on him. His wife's a drug addict. She's been abusing his children. And come to find out he's been an alcoholic since he was like 12 years old. So he's in trouble for months and months with the cops and just one thing after another. But he was always saying it was his PTSD. And I'm telling you right now, it's an absolute lie. It's a lie. Hey, if you had taken, he'd not been to combat, and his wife had been cheating on him, she was a drug addict, abusing his children, and he was $1.3 million in debt, do you think he would not have been affected? So he was using the combat stress actually as an excuse. And he'll even admit it to you too. But he still used it. Just not at me. But you, like say, you have to look at the exit wounds. You got to look. You can't just look at what's there. Now this is something I came up with a long time ago. I call it the balloon theory. The best way, okay, so if you keep pumping air into a balloon, at some point it's going to blow up. When balloons blow up, they don't go, they explode. So what we want to do is when we have stress is we want to release some of that air. So the best way to release that air is to talk about with your, cohorts or whatever, okay? So think about this, you got a little combat stress, but then you come home and, you got bills and your baby's crying and your kids are late for school and you get to work and your boss is getting in your face and you ran a red light, you got a ticket, and you add all these things together and it creates this big ass balloon, and when it blows up, it explodes. So what we got to do is got to try to stop that, treat that so it doesn't explode. Let that air out of that balloon. Okay, so Dave Grossman always talks. Dave Grossman is a lieutenant colonel, former Army Ranger, lieutenant colonel. He's also a PhD in psychology. Probably the best public speaker that you could ever see. Okay, talks to law enforcement and military all the time. But he has these two sayings that are really good. Pain shared is pain divided, and joy shared is joy multiplied. But like I say, when you sit around a fire with a bunch of veterans, or even just a bunch of people just talking, and just especially with the veterans, talking about combat and stuff, getting that stuff off your mind is a good thing. And then you realize that you're not the only one that has those type of issues or whatever. So I was in Jeff, when I was doing I was on the invasion, and then we were doing stabilization in Jeff a while later. So it was August 29th of 2003. And Al-Qaeda set off their very first car bomb in Iraq. They blew up a Shia mosque. Okay, Al-Qaeda are Sunni Muslims, and Shia Muslims are, if you don't know, these Muslims hate each other. Shias and Sunnis will get together to kill us, but they'll kill each other too. They hate each other. Anyway, they set up a bomb, and I was next to one of the hospitals at the governor's mansion in Najaf. So there was an Army Sergeant First Class that ran a hospital for the Americans, and it was 2 Marine snipers that needed to get over to the hospital when the incident happened. So I said, hey, I was driving, my Humvee was the ambulance. So hey, sir, I'll take them over to my captain. So I'll be right back. Literally, I could see the hospital. I had to go out, go over there. So maybe a quarter-mile drive. I said, sir, I'll be right back. Never, ever say I'll be right back and come back. 7.5 hours later, I got back. Okay? But we got over there, it was just absolute chaos because there were literally hundreds of people that were killed and wounded. And they were just going into the hospital. We were trying to stop the people from coming in. But these Marines were under a lot of stress, and I knew that. But they didn't want to talk about it. So after we'd been there for a little while, a doctor came up and got me, and he says, look, so it was me, 7 of my Marines, and 1 Navy Corpsman. So it was a total of 9 of us trying to control a situation where there was literally thousands of upset people. So he said, go back to the emergency room and help me control things back here. We went back there, and while I'm back there with my Marines, literally it was so bad, it's almost indescribable. They were bringing dead bodies out on gurneys, the stretchers, and it would take them and throw them over the wall into the dirt, take other bodies off the ambulance and just throw them into the blood, and the blood's it's in our eyes, it's in our face, all of our uniform, just blood everywhere. And then a little while later, he's like, hey, help me clear the hospital. So we ran upstairs, and I didn't want to take an elevator. I thought it was smart. But let me tell you, when you're wearing about 100 pounds of crap on your body, running up 8 flights of stairs, man, I was about having a heart attack at step 3, But anyway, we get up there, and we're going along, and we see some things there. And I'll get into it in a second. So these Marines and the Corpsmen, they didn't want to talk about this. So I went to the chaplain, I says, chaplain, I don't know I know it's going to affect these guys. There's no way it could be. I don't know what to do. He says, well, I'll tell you what. I'll come to your compound and I'll ask them why it affected them differently than it affects other people. I said, good idea. So they still didn't want to talk. And at one point I go, you know what? I remember at the emergency room this happened. And a couple of Marines go, yeah, I remember that. And I said, yeah, I remember up on the 8th floor. I remember the smells and the things were bad. And then this one Marine goes, oh my God. And this is really happened. He says, remember that little girl? She had been burned so badly that her skin had rolled down her leg like a sock that lost its tension and rolled down the leg. Her skin was like that. And it's just, you could see bone and stuff like that. And the smells and all that. And so you can see when the head wound affected them. But then they started talking about it. And they all let it loose. And next thing you knew, they were all talking about it. And then they all realized that they tried to block that out of their minds, which is impossible. Okay, so that actually helped them, and they still talk to me to this day about what I actually deceived them. I intentionally deceived them, but I think it was in a good way. Okay, so post-traumatic growth. I know for a fact that most veterans have post-traumatic growth, not post-traumatic stress. Or post-traumatic growth outweighs the post-traumatic stress, put it that way. They're actually stronger. After all the things that they saw and they went through, everything else becomes easier. Really, it really does. Okay, so after combat, everything else is easier, be better humans in every way. Growth, not stress, I just said that. Okay, helping is healing. I deal almost, I'm retired, but I deal almost every day with people who have combat stress. Almost every day I'm helping people through emails, phone calls, texts, Facebook, whatever. So it helps me. When I'm helping them, it makes me feel better too. I've told the VA, I think that they should create like fire teams. There should be, what I would do is I ran the VA, I would make these like little fire teams. And I'd have like a World War II veterans in charge, and there'd be a Korean veteran, and a Vietnam veteran, and a Gulf War veteran, and a new veteran. And I'd make these little teams. And I'd say, look, this is all you don't have to talk to each other every day, but you're in that team and you watch out for each other. So once a week you just go, hey dude, what's up? You know what I mean? Just to watch out for each other. Because when you're, understand something, if I'm helping you, there's less chance of me hurting myself, because I know that you're relying on me. So by me helping you, I'm actually helping myself too. And they were like, oh, that's a great idea, and then they didn't do anything about it. So, yeah, figures. Anyway, here's a big question, though. And this goes way beyond combat. This is really big, actually in the medical field too. Who's watching the watchers? You know, you always think about, oh, the guy below me, are they doing okay and everything? But who's asking the boss? And I'll tell you, when I was a first sergeant, many times I'd go into my COs, when I see the order stress, I'd walk, hey, sir, put your crap down, go home and see your family. And they say, hey, thank you very much. Because someone had to tell them to take care of themselves. Because they were so worried about doing their job, they forgot to take care of themselves. If you can't take care of yourselves, how can you take care of your man? But you got to watch out for the people above you and below you. So even in the Carolina Veterans Organization, you know, which is the reason I'm here, is for you guys. You got to watch out for each other, up and down. Okay, so we're not victims. Listen, don't treat us like that. But don't allow us to be treated that way. And don't allow us to fall into this vicious cycle of victimhood where I want to be a victim. You know, I mean, whatever. I mean, it's just, it drives me absolutely insane. Okay, so when you find somebody that needs some tough loving, stick your foot in their rear end and give them a wake-up call. Sometimes people need a wake-up call. Okay, we're different, not damaged. If y'all don't know, after World War II, during World War II, there were over 50,000 casualties, psychological casualties. Yet when they came back to the United States, the greatest generation, there were very few problems with psychological problems. Very few, comparatively. But let me tell you why. Vietnam is what really screwed this up, I'll tell you. It's not the veterans' fault. But what happened in Vietnam was, okay, in World War II, when war was over with, you got on a boat with all the guys you were in combat with, and you spent 30 days with nothing to do but talk about combat. Get it all out of your system. Got back to the States, started building roads, and the greatest generation was born. Then you get to Vietnam, and what do? You take them off of patrol, you throw them in a plane, and land in San Francisco, and someone spits on it. You know what I mean? Oh my God, there was no downtime. You leave a combat zone and bang! You're back in the civilian world. That's just not a good thing. Not a good thing, okay? So, but that's, you know, it's like, so when I was on I&I duty, running the reserves, we would bring them in, we would keep them on active duty for a couple extra months. They'd go deploy for 7 months. So we'd get them ready for 3 months, deploy them for 7 months, and we'd keep them on deck for 2 more months, unless there was a reason, because they had to get to college or whatever. But in general, we'd keep them there for another 60 days, just so they could be with the guys they were in combat with. Okay, so every day we're in combat, we can't wait to be home. Can't wait. Because this is the greatest country in the world, and it is. But it's not nothing's ever as great as you thought it was. You know what I mean? So every day you're in combat, you can't wait to get home, but every day you're home, you wish you were back in combat. Because you forget how bad it was over there, too. And combat can actually be fun. The adrenaline rush can be fun. It doesn't make you a psychopath. A lot of times veterans do misremember things. They probably weren't as great as they thought they were, or as they tell you they were. The firefights probably weren't as intense. Sometimes they're worse, but sometimes they're not. But they like to put out this tough guy. Something I've noticed with this newer generation, which I'm actually part of, is that it was a point where like, oh, you got to talk about PTSD, you got to talk, and now it's almost like a bragging thing nowadays. And like they want to compare, well, mine's worse than yours. I mean, are you guys crazy? Wait, you're comparing whose PTSD is whose. It's just like me and my pink necklace there. Some of you are greatly affected and some are not, you know what I mean? So you don't know who's affected. Some people are affected more by something minor than other people with something major. So you have to look at the individual, okay? So I believe that, and you know what CBT is, everybody? Okay, cognitive behavior therapy. There's different theories on combat veterans, how you should treat them. I say that if you got to have cognitive behavior therapy because cognitions are the way you think. If you can't, the way you think is the way you behave. They're linked. You can't de-link those two. But there's people that argue back and forth on the way it is. I believe you have to attack both. You got to have to go after the way you think and the way they act, because they both affect. Okay, so how do we bridge the gap? Okay, so vets to the civilian world. That's why I'm glad there's a bunch of non-vets in there too. Okay, so you got a lot of veterans saying, "Oh, I don't want to tell my story." Damn, tell your story. If you don't tell the civilians your story, listen, you don't go up and tell them, "Oh, dude, I shot this guy in the face, his head exploded." That's not what I'm talking about. But if you don't tell them your experiences in combat, how do you expect them to understand anything? That's really unfair if you think about it. Oh, they don't understand it. Well, if you don't tell them, how can they possibly understand you? Okay? Tell your story. Educate the public. And don't be a jerk. There are veterans out there that when you say, hey, thank you for your service, they're like, don't thank me. My friend's like, shut up, you idiot. If someone says thank you for your service, say thank you to them. Don't, they'll get in someone's face like, oh, don't thank me, and then they'll get pissed off because somebody doesn't thank them. It just doesn't make any sense, Kills me. Obviously, you don't understand. Remember, we joined the military so that the other people didn't have to go through the crap we go through. Okay? So to punish them for not going through it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Okay? The media. Oh, dude, I hate the freaking media. Okay? One of my favorite. I don't hashtag it. The only hashtag I've had is hashtag CNN sucks. Okay? The news media is absolutely terrible. If you think you know what's going on in the world by watching CNN or Fox or NBC, you're the psycho, okay? Because you don't know. You only know what they want you to know. So you gotta look at a million sources. But anyway, so sometimes the news media is trying to do a good thing. They're trying to educate the public on PTSD. And they keep talking about it. And the TVs and the movies. Okay. Has anyone in here seen the movie? It's actually not a bad movie. It's called Max, about a dog, a canine from Iraq War. Okay, so it could have been a really good movie. This kid, he was a Marine Corporal. He had a canine that was IED dog, and he was killed on an IED incident. And the movie could have been a great movie, but what did Hollywood have to do? Okay, so what did they have to do? Okay, so his high school buddy, who was a corporal in the United States Marine Corps infantry, was shipping weapons from Iraq, RPGs and machine guns from a corporal in the infantry. This is literally impossible. No way. That's like you shipping stuff from Iraq, you in this room. It's not possible. But what happens though is civilians see that movie and they think, oh my God, that could happen. No, it couldn't happen. It's not possible. Okay? Oh, but this guy might be able to do something. But there's so many checks and balances. It's just unrealistic. So the media and the TV and all that, they keep putting out this stuff, and people believe that it's true. If you think about it, and this is something different though, if you think a lot of the racism in this country and stuff, where does it come from? It comes from Comedy Central. It comes from, and I think they're funny too, but the comedians, it's almost all racist crap. You know what I mean? And media and all this stuff. It's like, and where I live, I interact with blacks, whites, Hispanics, Arabs, everything, almost every day. There's no problem where I'm at. The only reason I know there's a problem in this country is because CNN tells me there is. You know what I'm saying? Don't get me wrong, there are some problems. But they create a lot of these problems. And, you know, understand something, the news needs you to be pissed off, because if you're pissed off, you'll keep watching. Okay, so what's the way forward? For the veterans, hey, your mission is to educate the public. Ignorance is a lack of knowledge, so educate them. Okay? Show the world we're not a bunch of psychopaths, and most importantly, stop blaming PTSD for everything. It's just a bunch of garbage. Okay, and this is Dr. Dave Grossman, his book on combat. If you ever plan to be a law enforcement guy or a military guy, it's a really good book to read. I always like this picture. It's a bunch of jarheads running through the desert on Christmas Day, you know, coming from the east, whatever. I thought it was good. Anyway, and that is my presentation for the most, yeah. What's going on? That's it. Questions? Any questions? We got a few minutes for questions. Yes, sir.
So that gunny who was given Taliban's finger,
Yeah.
who got blown up, did he get NJP for his White Sox?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Or were you in the Marine Corps?
Yeah, I'm his brother.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've always wondered about that.
Well, I'll tell you something. You know, it's like, well, it depends on the commander. I've never heard of anyone ever being NJP'd for White Sox. I've heard people get yelled at for it. Huh?
I almost did after I got blown up. First sergeant said better.
You probably deserved it, though. Oh, okay, so you'll hear all the times you'll hear Marines say, "Oh, I got busted for underage drinking." I will bet you didn't get busted for underage drinking. And I don't mean you, I mean that person. You probably got busted for throwing a freaking beer bottle at the cars in the parking lot while you were underage drinking. No one comes and knocks on your door and says, "Hey, are you underage drinking?" Not my command, anyway. So, hey, the military is a great institution, but there's a lot of idiots in the military too. So you might, what command were you with?
Third LAR.
There you go, LAR. Learn on the retards. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. So, third LAR out of
29 pounds.
20 bombs?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Well, it depends on your first sergeant and your sergeant major. That's or your CO.
Yeah.
But that's ridiculous. I could care less. You know what? I could care less what color socks that you're wearing. But you know you're not supposed to wear white, so don't show them to me. If you think anyone's going after anybody when they get blown up for white, come on, man.
I had to take my boots off.
Okay, any other questions? Anything about psychology or this presentation? Anything? Yes, ma'am.
So you talked about sunburn pre-deployment resiliency and stuff like that, and afterwards looking at that.
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
curious about your opinions on during wall people in theater, what can be done to increase resilience. You know, we had an interesting conversation with a group of people reading Carl Lundy's book, the Marines or Vietnam, and it's got a lot of ideas about small things that can be done.
Well, you're in theater.
Yeah, well, if not major.
But it's, no, it's like putting on sunscreen after you got a sunburn.
Kind of. Well,
I mean, it does help,
Or the-
but it's not ideal.
Fair enough.
So, I've given this class to guys before they went to combat, mostly, sometimes while they're in theater, and actually sometimes when they come back. And I'm tell you something, every time I've given this, or not this speech, but I have a 4-hour presentation called Surviving Combat. And after every time I've given that speech, the guys that have already been to combat, they are pissed after. Why didn't I learn this before? I've been teaching this class since, for 10 years now. But the DOD hasn't called out, come on, man, what's up? You know, I can only do so much stuff, you know. I know that probably didn't really answer your question.
Well, it sounds like you can't put sunscreen on after you've got sunburn, so you think to some degree.
Well, you can, but it would have been a lot better if they'd known before. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, this is really interesting and it's great, but my experience is that there's no class, there's nothing anybody can tell you or show you that's going to prepare you for the first time you're in combat.
No,
There's no way you can do it.
You're absolutely right, sir. You're absolutely right. But the fact that you might throw up after you kill people. If I don't tell you that, and then all your buddies are laughing and joking, and you're over there hiding, throwing up, and hiding the fact that you're throwing up, and I didn't teach you that, you could think that you're crazy, or that you're the anomaly. Or you might think that there are a bunch of crazy people, but really the survivor before. But I do understand what you're saying. So until you've actually been shot, at, you don't know what it's like to be shot at, just like you don't know what it's like to, that's why in the Marine Corps, we make every person, but when they go to boot camp, every Marine must get, all get punched in the face. They all get their asses beat in boot camp, because they may not have got their asses beat before. And you don't want combat for the first time. Yeah, we make every Marine that goes to boot camp, they have to box. And they beat the crap out of each other. Yeah, but because, believe it or not, there's lots of them that go to boot camp and have never been in a fight in their life. There's lots of guys in military, never been in a fist fight.
The other thing is, as a veteran, you can't be surprised or irritated by really stupid questions. When I was in graduate school, I actually had another graduate student ask me if it hurts to be shot. And I couldn't think of how to answer it. It's like,
But you know what though, sir?
does it hurt to be shot?
But there is kind of an answer to that. And what I mean by that is that there's a saying, bone hits hurt, soft hits don't. Soft hits kill you, bone hits don't. So the ones that hurt a lot, you're probably going to be okay. It's the ones that don't hurt that are probably going to kill you. But I do know what you're saying. That's not like a stupid question. Does it hurt to get, does it hurt to get your foot run over by a car? Yeah, it probably does.
It's answered, like,
What do you do, sir? I know you're a Vietnam veteran.
yes.
I know that. I already knew that. So I heard you in the hallway. What do you do now, sir?
Well, I was teaching for a long time. I worked
Here?
I worked in the news media for many, many years.
Oh, God, I hate you. But you're a veteran, so now are you.
So do I.
Now you're 50-50.
Yeah,
All right, go ahead, sir.
No, I was with the 199 Light Infantry.
Go, the what?
199 Light Infantry.
Parts of the 99?
And,
Army infantry.
for about 9 months I did work.
And you were in Vietnam.
Yes.
Yeah. So, what did you think of this? Did this ring?
Yeah,
So
I mean,
you
some
are-
of the, your job of having to inform families.
It still gets me.
I don't know that I could have done it. I visited the families of some of my friends, but it was a long time after. And so it wasn't like I was, giving them the news.
Yeah.
I just went to see them and meet them and talk to them so that they had questions of me. And mostly, I ended up telling them really, just funny, goofy stories about stuff that we did because, I knew their son really well.
Sure.
I don't think I could have done it.
Well, sir, this is my wife right here. Okay, so on the 30th of October, 2005, I came home from that run in Savannah, sweating like a pig, and walked in the house, and she said, "Hey, you got another cake call." And I'm not kidding you. This is exactly what I did. I remember walking around in circles, only because I had my hands on my head, and I go, I can't do this, baby. I can't do this anymore. And she looked at me, and she goes, "Shut up, suck it up, and go do your job. Go do your job." She says, "No one can do it better. Go take care of the family." So I did what she told me to do. And she was right. But I'm telling you, it affected me. So, I didn't want to do it. I really didn't want to do it. Because it's the worst thing you could ever, it's the worst job I've ever had. How about some of the non-military? Did you get anything out of this, or anyone? How about you up there, ladies?
I really enjoyed it. A lot of my family's previous military, so I feel like it's helpful to sort of see it from a different perspective. They don't talk about it a lot, so it's nice to sort of, understand.
Anyone else? I saw you three making a lot of notes. When you're saying this guy's an idiot, this guy's an idiot. I'll bet it right on your paper. Before I got a whole bunch of, what'd you think?
We're actually working on a project. We're in a class which is foreign literature. So we've read a lot of things from veterans' perspectives and just a lot of books. And I thought it was obviously extremely interesting, but also how important it is. I've learned in this semester and through this presentation as well, so much information that I would have never known. And I think awareness, at least from civilians, that we would never really be able to understand. Awareness is really important. Just like both to appreciate, just like everything. I think so many people just don't know, and that I I think civilians just could help as well, and if they need more.
You know, there's something that's not in my presentation that you just made me think of though, is that you'll sometimes hear civilians say, oh, these military are warmongers. That's amazing, because every war who's ever been started in this country has been by a civilian. Every one. The U.S. military has never started a war. Tell me when it's ever happened. The President of the United States and Congress are civilians. They send us to war. We don't send ourselves to war. So to criticize the soldiers for doing their job is crazy. But you see it all the time, you know, and people criticizing the military for doing their job. Oh, well, you, whatever. Listen, if I had not joined the Marine Corps, I would probably be dead or in jail. Okay, that's a fact. It saved me. And I'll bet you there's plenty of people in this room that can say the same thing, whether it be Marines or airmen or soldiers or sailors. The U.S. military is a very good institution, and it saves a lot of people. Okay? I was going nowhere. I mean, I was going nowhere. Period. They saved me. And
I remember some.
yeah. Did you have anything to say, Dave?
I was just to say, I remember some of where you were going.
Yeah. I got a couple cousins here and a wife. What were you going to say?
Well, I was just gonna say that I'm from Venezuela, which is in South America.
Yeah.
And a reason why I said appreciate is because, I mean, people in this for very different reasons, but I feel like, at least from what I've heard, from what we've learned, the duty and love that I feel like veterans have for this country is something that I wish people from my country have. Because I think that's what makes this country as great as it is.
You know, some people say, as we say in Marine Corps all the time, we fight for God, country, and Corp. That's absolutely a bunch of garbage. We do not fight for God, country, and Corp. I fight for the dude next to me. And you know something great? Let me tell you the greatest thing about combat. No one ever in a firefight looks over and goes, hey dude, where are you from? Or what religion are you? Or what color? No one cares. We fight for each other. That's a fact. I don't care. I'm a Marine. I fought next to soldiers too. I didn't care. It didn't matter. They are Americans. We fight together, you know? And I'll do anything. I know that they'll do anything for me. Therefore, I'll do anything for them. It is a brotherhood that is beyond, it's undescribable. That when you've been through that kind of adversity together, the brotherhood you have, the love you have for each other, and you can say that, love. You're in combat and you love the man next to you. That's why you do what you do. That's a fact. Isn't there a big problem in Venezuela right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I just saw some on the news like a couple days ago. Man, you better stay here for a while. You know? Is it pretty bad down there, or is it a bunch of media crap too?
No, it's completely
Pretty bad? Yeah. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. First of all, thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you.
So, as a former Marine, 2-6, I deployed twice to Afghanistan, and both times we had issues with guys either drinking or driving or depression or several things here and there related to combat. And every time we did, we normally had a safety standing out, where we would just, for those who don't know what a safety standing out is, we would sit in a room for about 10 hours and listen to PowerPoints and people talking at us in these lectures.
Yeah, don't drink and drive.
Absolutely.
Wear a condom.
So there's been a lot of research that they actually discourage people from talking about the problems because, you know, obviously everyone hated the safety stand down, and so no one would want to talk and come forth because people were afraid of the safety stand down.
Sure.
How do you feel from a retired perspective, having gone through the ranks and having seen surely a bunch of safety stand downs?
Well, so, let me tell you something. I'm an anomaly because I really didn't give a crap what people wanted. I did what I wanted to do, what I thought was right. And I'll give you an example. In 2009, we were in Iraq, and there were more suicides in Iraq, non-infantry guys, support guys. There were more suicides than there were combat deaths in 2009. Every time there was a suicide, we had to do a stand down and had to get them together and talk to them about suicide. I did enough of that crap. So I was walking down, I was in an electronic warfare squad, Tommy's unit, and I went down, I was like, I'm not doing this crap anymore. So I went out in front of them, I had 150 Marines out there, whatever. I says, I'll tell you what, I've been ordered to talk to you again about suicide. I'm not doing it. I says, I'll tell you what I will do. And I brought out this little stand out here. I said, here's a stand. I says, who's ever been affected by suicide? I was absolutely blown away. probably 80% of the individuals there raised their hand in there. So I was like, oh my God, because I'd never been around that. I just heard about it. Believe it or not, the infantry doesn't really have that many suicides. It's the sport units usually. But anyway, this one Marine got up there. He was our career planner, which is like the guys that get you to stay in, you re-enlist to them. So he stood up there, and his brother was a soldier who died, who committed suicide. Well, I'll explain. Okay, so he got up on this little podium I had there, and I refused to do what I was supposed to do. He stood up there and he says, let me tell you something. He says, my brother was a soldier, and he was with 3rd Infantry. He goes, the 3rd Infantry screwed him as far as I'm concerned. He says, as soon as they came home, they sent him home and told him to go home on leave. They came right out of combat and went home on leave. Anyway, he was having pain, and he had these, I've never had them, but there's narcotic patches, pain patches, that you put like anywhere you want, but it's like, instead of taking like an oxycodone, you put it on and it doesn't. So what he did is he took the entire package and put it all over his body and he killed himself. Okay? So they say he committed suicide. But what was so profound about this, what he told was, it's not just that his brother died. He said, let me tell you something. He says, my brother died. He says, I can accept that. He says, I'm okay with that. Because it happened. He says, but let me tell you something. It tore my family to pieces. What a lot of people don't think about is when, the people who want to commit suicide, they don't understand it. It's one of the most selfish things you could ever do. Because you leave everybody else to deal with what you left behind. And what happens when someone commits suicide? All their friends are going, oh my God, you know what? He gave me a CD 2 years ago. I should have known that was an indicator. Shut the hell up. If you had known that he was going to commit suicide, you would have done something. So, but we all want to blame ourselves after somebody commits suicide. That's very common anyway. But yeah, so he said, yeah, it tore his family. They all separated, and they were just in war with each other over this guy committing suicide. I don't even know. Did I answer your question? Do you even have a question?
Yeah, my question, sorry, it was a little bit convoluted. How do you feel like safety standouts are necessary evil, or do you feel like there's a better way you could do it?
Okay. I did safety standouts because I had to, okay? But I did them my way. I always did it my way. I always did everything my way. And he got to see a little bit of it. I was kind of an anomaly though, because I didn't play by the rules a lot. And actually, I got along better with sergeants than I did with freaking staff sergeants. I was the guy, dude, in that unit, I would get out and I'd drive SATS loaders, which I'd load, the loading the ECM pods. And I learned how to drive 10K forklifts when I was on I-9 duty. I always get out there and wood rooms. I was a parachutist. So I went in and I helped guys pack parachutes for the veteran gun. But I like being with the guys doing things. Most guys in my rank didn't do that stuff. They sat back and, their holier than now attitude, I'm sure you saw that, the first sergeant sergeant, hey, devil dogs, the hell with that. Go into the smoke pit and talk to them, you know what I mean? But, hey, devil dog. Devil dog's usually derogatory, you know that. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't like standouts, but they're kind of a necessary evil. Sometimes. Anyone else? No one? What do you got, boss?
I
You
just
got a
actually,
30-pound brain, come on, man.
so my question is, I have two questions.
Yeah.
So, the first is a random question. Do you ever hold a billet?
Yeah,
What was that?
what do you think? I was a drill instructor.
You were a drill instructor?
Yeah.
No kidding.
You know what I take pride in? People don't know I was a drill instructor.
Exactly. Yeah, so it's
Because most Marine drill instructors, you know they're a drill instructor the second they open their freaking mouth. Okay?
right. You come
I'm
out
pretty
with-
proud of the fact that I'm,
So the other question I had, I'm about to do a clinical in the VA for my nursing program.
you gonna do a what?
I'm going to do a clinical, so I'm going to
Clinical,
go
okay.
work on the floor
Sure.
as a nurse or a nursing student.
I go to the VA, I know exactly what you're talking about. VCU, Virginia Commonwealth University,
Yeah.
they come to, like, when I go to my appointments as VCU students in my, when I get treated all the time, so,
And so I'm going to do a psych rotation.
okay?
And I'm wondering if you have any kind of advice for me, just in general.
Absolutely. And when we're done here, you come out to my vehicle, I give you my, so I can know my book. If you were, I've got a few books in my truck out there, of my surviving combat for military veterans or whatever. And it explains a lot of things way more in depth than I talked about here. But I think you might find it helpful. And if you want, I'll give you an email. You can ask me any question you want. But I'm gonna tell you something about the VA. The VA takes a lot of criticism. And I'll tell you, I hate the bureaucrats at the VA. The bureaucrats are terrible. But the medical personnel that I've dealt with the VA are absolutely outstanding. Absolutely. Haven't had a problem with them. If you can get past that piece of crap lady at the front desk to get to the medical people, then you're okay. If you can get past that piece of crap, you're always going to be fine. But that's the biggest problem is the VA is the people that are not the medical people. But they do a lot of good things. At the VA in Richmond, there's VCU students in there every day, bird dogging with the medical personnel.
Excellent.
You're going to do the psychology portion, you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the psychologist I see has never ever had anyone sit there. I always let people come into my appointments. The only thing I told Aaron last night, it's the only thing I won't let them do, I get RFA, which is refractive or radio frequency ablation in my spine, and I let an intern or a resident do it once and he hit my spine with a needle and almost put me in shock. So now I say don't only the doctor can do it. But anyway, they're good. Anyone else have anything? Yes, sir.
So PTSD, I've heard some conversation to various audiences that some opinions is take the word disorder out of there. It's PTS, it's post-traumatic stress. Disorder piece is kind of a,
Here's the problem though. Psychologists will tell you there's no such thing. I would also tell you this. I believe that combat stress should be its own category. Why would you put car accidents and rape victims with combat stress? To me, it's two totally different things. But the DSM-5 does not do that. It only says if you meet these criteria. In fact, where's that book? Right there. In the back of that book there, the criteria for the DSM-4 for post-PTSD is actually in there. But I would agree with you. You have post-traumatic stress. Should the disorder be there? I'd say I agree that it shouldn't be there, but I will tell you that the psychologist, the book of crazies, the DSM-5, it is there. So, but I would agree.
seem to lend to a stigma, depending on what you're dealing with, the individual.
What do you think?
It's
on
a
your
label.
What's that?
Disorder is a label. I just don't like disorder. Really.
What about anything else in here? Do you have anything?
Well, I related it more to the children and families I work with.
Mhm.
And
Was anything here helpful for that?
yes,
Okay.
a lot of it is.
Are you, you're a child psychologist?
A social worker, child social
Okay,
worker. I
child
work
social
with foster children in foster care. So there's a lot of PTSD.
Well, I tell you, my wife and I was giving a speech in Las Vegas 14 years ago, 2003. And there's this little kid, a little black kid, and he's just so cute. He wanted to come over and get a picture with me and my wife after my speech. And do you remember this bit? And this little kid walks over, and he wanted to get a picture with us. So what do? We put our arms around him, and he went like this. And there was something wrong. We were like, what's wrong with this kid? Come to find out, this kid had been, his mom had beat him so badly, she had crushed his orbital bones all the way around. So his head was like caved in, his eyeballs. So this was they call it the Girls and Boys Club. But these were all children that there were either one of two things. Either their parents could not handle them or their parents abused them. All of the kids in this place. And I'll tell you, some of these kids were so drugged they were almost zombies. Because they were so out of control, they had to drug them. Well, that's what they said.
That's
So
what
they
we
said.
went with instead of trying to get
Yeah.
to the root.
But I mean, it wasn't just this kid. It was just, I felt so cared. This kid was so precious, and he just wanted to get a picture. We went to put our arms around it, both of us, and he lost it because an adult was putting her hands there, and it just, how can someone treat a child like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Tommy, what do you got, bud?
That's it.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're 7 minutes over time, so.
Thank you everyone for
I don't-
coming.
Hey, thank you very much.